growing up listening to roots reggae, it's always been important for me to incorporate, foundation artists or roots artists within our festivals and our events. I always worry that the roots of reggae music will not be forgotten, but it won't be as strong as it once was. And I think it's important for me to, and people I work with, to really kind of showcase those artists.
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Michael Franti here, and welcome to this week's edition of the Stay Human podcast. I'm super excited about today's guest, and we want to thank Gibson Guitars, as always, for sponsoring the show. If you're ever in Nashville, go check out the Gibson Garage. It's an incredible place to just get your hands on new instruments, old instruments, hear about the history of how the electric guitar was invented all the way up through today, all kinds of cool amplifiers and gears. It's like a museum that you can handle the art. It's a really great place. And our guest today is the co-owner and producer of the largest reggae festival in the U.S., the California Roots Music and Arts Festival. And he's also the promoter and operational partner for music venues and other outdoor festivals throughout North America. Cali Roots has become synonymous with a lineup heavy with the top performers in the genre, cultivated fan experiences, dedicated greening initiatives, and a commitment to giving back to incredible nonprofits. Not only that, but for their unwavering dedication to the environment, in 2020, Cali Roots became the first certified green event in the state of California. So please welcome to the podcast, Dan Sheehan of Cali Roots. How you doing, Dan?
I'm good, Michael. Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Man, I
love the intro too.
Thank you, bro. Isn't it kind of cool to hear all the things that you've done just line up in a row? You're like, wow, did I do all that shit?
I know. It is actually pretty cool. Like, damn, all right. Okay. I guess I'm on the right path here. So.
I want to start, by going into your life and how you grew up, as that's what I always do. But before that, I just want to ask the question to you, as a festival promoter, there's highs and lows and ups and downs. You do some gigs, some really bang it, at the ticket box. Others, don't hit it quite so hard. But man, you've just gone through 2 years where you weren't even able to really sell a ticket. And when you're in the business of bringing people together and you can't bring people together, just how have you guys survived?
It was a challenge, man. It was, I think, as of recently, it's gotten a lot better, obviously. But, when the pandemic first started, because I also own and operate the Fremont Theater in San Luis Obispo. And I can remember we had a show on, I think it was March 13th. London Bridge, the San Francisco mayor shut down San Francisco. And that was kind of the trickle effect. Everything just shut down from there. Mm-hmm. And I can remember calling my house manager and being like, dude, we got to cancel this show tonight. It was a sold out show. I think it was Hobo Johnson, I think we had that night. And we had to cancel that show. And that was it, it was done. And we were trying to figure out, there's internally, within the industry, there's a joke, right? It's like, well, we'll just revisit this in 2 weeks, and I can remember keeping, just in 2 weeks, we just got to, we all got to get together. We'll make this happen. We'll survive this for 2 weeks. And little did any of us know, 2 years later, we're still, we started coming back. I think, last winter we started coming, doing more shows, but it was, for a minute, and it was, I didn't know how we were going to make it as a business. It's like, obviously this is our livelihood. This is how we put a roof over our head and, take care of our families, and to have that just abruptly taken away. It was like, it wasn't like a slow burn. The thing was it was like that, and we were done, and so we survived. We, on the Cali Roots side, we really leaned into our merch. I think like a lot of us did, I think, bands and other events, and artists, we all kind of leaned into our merch and leaned into the brand of what we're doing. And we really kind of turned it around, and we actually turned it into something that it's always like our brand for Cali Roots has always been strong. Our merch has always been strong, but we just elevated it at 10 different levels, and we were able to survive on that and have that revenue coming in, but also staying relevant. I think that was the whole other side of it too. Like, how do you stay relevant through this time? As an event, it's like, so because we're not putting out new music, we're not putting out, we had a bunch of, historical content from, from our live streams and stuff that we really leaned into the YouTube to get it going, but we didn't have any new content coming out. I was like, how many times can we keep pushing the lineup that might or might not happen, and so we really dug deep, and, unfortunately I had to lay off most of my staff, and that was hard. And so it's just me and Amy, my wife, just kind of running the whole thing. And Dana, who's our marketing director, just kind of running this whole operation. Because, all of our venues were completely shut down. Those were, literally nothing happening. So, and we did a couple virtual festivals, like Can't Stop the Music Festival, which was like an online festival. And, that was fine, but it's like, when you're kind of a promoter and I'm not just a talent buyer, right? I'm a promoter and I'm a producer of the events. And so I like to get my hands dirty. And so like not being able to like really physically do it, was definitely challenging. And as it went on and on, there was definitely emotional, like it was like you kind of run this roller coaster, and I wouldn't necessarily say, depression, but there was definitely times where like you put so much into building this business and building this career for yourself, and to not be able to do it anymore, let alone the financial impact of it. That's a whole nother thing. But like the fact that like you said earlier, like we bring people together, and like that's what we do for a living. We bring people together, and to not be able to do that and not feel the energy from the crowd like that. Like just like you feeling on stage, it's like, as a promoter, like I feel that same energy when we open our gates and those people are coming in, they're so stoked to be there, and like knowing that we were a big part, we are one part of the puzzle that makes this happen. And to not have that was definitely challenging.
Big loss.
Yeah. And it kind of messed with my head a little bit. And, and there was times like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, am I going to go like, try to, be a real estate guy, or like, play the stock market, or like, it's like no, like I want to do events, and I want to be in the music industry. And this is the industry that, I belong in and I want to be in. And as we started to come out of it, we got it together, and we're hiring our staff again. We're, scaling back up, and it feels good, man. It's like, it's, I think like anything, when something's just taken away from you, I think you appreciate it more. You look back and like, wow, like I took certain aspects of our lives for granted, and there's obviously a lot of silver linings. I got to spend quality time, like great time with my daughter, who was, 5 and 6, she was 4 and 5, and now she's 6, and spend that quality time with her where, I'd be, the summers I'd be at, festivals and covering shows. And so I was able to spend like real time that, was the huge.
Those are precious years you can't get back. The reason I wanted to start off with that question, Dan, is because, as obviously you're a promoter, you're a business person, you're a gatherer of people, and you're a fan. Like that's the thing I've always known about you, is that you're somebody who you love the music. And that's why I've seen, there's some promoters who have, done independent things for a little while, and then they're like, well, if Live Nation wants to do this with us, or if we could partner with some, they go that direction, and you guys have done it because of the music and because of the community. And I want to find out about you, of what your life was like that kind of led you up to this point. So what kind of a family did you grow up in, and where did you grow up?
I grew up, I was an only child, which, has its pros and cons. But I grew up in Hawaii. I grew up on the island of Oahu. My parents moved there when I was 2 years old. I was born in New Mexico. And my parents moved there when I was 2 years old, to kind of get away from, come from a big family, which is why I was probably only an only child. And they moved there, and I grew up in, I first lived in Wahiawa, and then Waipahu, and then we really put our roots down in Ewa Beach, which is on the leeward side of Oahu. And so, as anybody that knows Hawaii, it's like, reggae is a huge part of the bloodline. It's the heartbeat of the state. It's like, it's one of the only places in the world where you can listen to, reggae on a clear channel radio. That's, it's programmed island and reggae music, and there's several stations like that. But I grew up listening to, I grew up I grew up with island culture, and I grew up because my family wasn't military or anything, and I was living with in places where I was the haole guy, but like I grew up there, and all my friends are local, and I ended up playing high school sports there. I went to Campbell High School and played high school sports all through high school. But like reggae was such a big part of it. I grew up listening to obviously Bob and the Gladiators and Israel Vibrations, the Melodians and Meditations, and all these bands that became part of, that's part of my group, my how I grew up. My parents were, they were kind of into music, but not, they kind of were, kind of wasn't, and they never really embraced the Hawaii culture. Well, whereas I was like fully in it because I kind of was, it was part of it was a survival mechanism because like, I was the only white guy in school. So like I needed to like, adapt. But, as I became, friends with everybody at a young age, I was like, it was, like I said, kind of being an only child, like all my friends were, my brothers and sisters and all their moms and dads or uncles and aunties. And so I really kind of grew up with that sense of community, and, which has kind of shaped who I am. And growing up in Hawaii is definitely a big part of who I am and the direction I went,
What did your parents do?
My dad was he hated his job. He hated his jobs, which is why I wanted to start my own business. He kind of put that entrepreneurial spirit in me because he's like, you don't want to work for somebody. And I haven't worked for anybody since I was like 25, so like that really stuck. And so he was a salesman for a few different companies. And then my mom was the general manager of Diversified Exterminators, which is kind of like a pest control company. And so that was that. And so I would work there through the summers, doing ground termites. And so like I'd be in their houses, digging holes and doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was their thing. So, which again, like showed me like how much like I really just want to like, because I can remember my dad just not being stoked on it, and coming home and just like, not really liking his job. And it's like, ugh, that kind of sucks, And so I kind of, I've always lived by the model of like, you got to love what you do. And if you can turn it into a career and that's how you make money, then, I feel like you're winning. So.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were a kid, you just described, being the only white kid in this brown school and this island culture, and you described like that, how you've absorbed all that and it was around you all the time. Were there parts of it that weren't so easy for you, or is being that only kid?
Well, I mean, I'm also a big guy too, right? So like, even as a sixth grader or seventh grader, I was bigger than, a lot of the high schoolers. And so there was definitely times where I would get picked on or called out because I was the haole, and even though I'm like, local and I'm like hanging with all the local, I could speak Pidgin as just as good as anybody, and like that was part of my dialect was speaking Pidgin. So there was definitely times like that where it was definitely a little rough, and I had to learn to scrap, I had to learn to fight, and I had to learn to defend myself, and but that also shaped me into who I am. I mean, I think it's those kind of, and like, definitely getting, called names and being discriminated against, and from my side of it, like, which as a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, I mean, that was definitely like, shit, why don't they like me, and so but as I grew up in it, and that like, again, that kind of shaped me to who I am.
Yeah. At what point did you start going to see music?
So my first concert was, I think I was 12 years old, Waikiki Shell, Oswald. And I mean, Oswald just, I mean, it's just legendary, man. Yeah. And it's just like that sound. And I can remember being at the Waikiki Shell, there's a back fence, and that's where we would all hang out, was on the back fence line. And I saw them there, and obviously I Still Pulse was another one I saw there. But yeah, Oswald was my first one. I went to a couple UB40 shows, because UB40 is like, I mean, in Hawaii at their peak, I mean, they were selling 2 nights out the show. That's 8,000 tickets a night, so like they were, and I can remember going to those shows, and that was kind of like my introduction to live music.
What did you feel? What did you feel when, Oswald, comes on stage, and, that drums, the bass, the horn section, like they're just like there's such a force, Oswald, you know?
Yeah. I felt it was, I mean, obviously I was young, I was only 12, it was like nothing I've ever felt before, and, anybody that knows music, right? Live music and recorded music, they're two different things. And like to be able, I knew Oswald songs. So when I saw that and I saw, I felt it, and I'm feeling it right now talking about it, and I'm kind of like, I'm flashing back to when I was 12 and I was like, just kind of like feeling the, like, like chicken skin and butterflies, and just kind of, but like, wide eyed, like, holy cows, what is this? This is so badass, and that was that was my first show. And I can remember, I think I told my parents I was going to a sleepover or something, and I went to this show, because I was 12 and my parents were, it's like, my parents weren't like super like, yeah, whatever, go do whatever you want. They were definitely like, no, we'll go do a sleepover, So, but it was kind of the beginning of it all, so.
Yeah. The first concert I ever went to on my own was, because I had gone to see the Commodores, but a friend of mine's mom had taken me. But the first show I ever went to on my own, was in Davis. I was listening to KDVS radio station, which is the college station at night. They were like, yeah, the next caller wins tickets. And like, I'm listening to this music, and they were playing Linton Kwesi Johnson. It was the reggae hour. And then they're like, oh, nobody called in. So like, at first they said like the seventh caller. Then they were like, we'll take the third caller. Then we're like, if anybody fucking calls at midnight tonight, like we give you the tickets. So I called and I won these tickets, and I go to see Linton Kwesi Johnson, and he walks out on stage, his little pork pie hat on, his little, collar buttoned up, jacket and vest. And he starts reading these, this poem called Sonny's Letter, which is all about how the police had stopped these two teenagers and beat one of them up, and the brother intervenes and kills this police officer with his hands in some horrible accident. He's writing a letter home to his mom from jail saying, I just couldn't stand there and let my brother be beaten by these police officers. I'm so sorry. And it's an apology to his mom. And then after he reads it a cappella, the band kicks in with this like drums and bass behind it. And he does the whole song again with, the Dennis Bavell dub band behind him. And I was just, I'm in this room with probably, 90 people, 80 people, little coffee house. And I was just blown away by it. And I was like, I want to do this. Like, I want to be part of this. I didn't know if I was going to be the bass player, if I was going to be the sound man, I was going to be the guy reading the poem. But I was so moved by this idea that music and consciousness could come together in a way that would inspire lives and change people the way that it changed me. And I know that that's part of your guys' commitment at Cali Roots, all the things I described in the intro of like being a green festival is important to you guys. And, it's not important to every promoter, frankly, but to your community that you've fostered and the identity that you guys have put that on the forefront. Tell me about why, and perhaps how growing up the way that you did, that you have that appreciation for nature and preserving it.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously growing up in Hawaii is like nature is a big, it's just taking care of the Aina, and like that's a big part of it. You got to take care of your land. And obviously Jack Johnson is huge, and that's a big component of what he does. And for me, it's similar to other people that are doing it. It's the right thing to do, right? It's like as the festival, we create a lot of waste. And I can remember when we didn't, we weren't always green, right? We probably year 3 or 4 is when we really like kind of got eye opened. And that's kind of when we were growing as promoters and growing as humans too. And like, all right, like what? And I can remember going out to the main concert grounds after the show was over, and it was just a sea of plastic cups. Yeah. And I was like, this is not right. Like what we're doing is like, we need to make changes. And so year 4, we implemented our pint program, working with Clean Canteen. And so we started eliminating most of, a lot of the single-use plastic cups. Eventually those plastic cups turned into compostable cups, but we're still using the pint program. And then we started working with Reverb, who's a fantastic organization. And they kind of helped us with our water refill. We haven't sold a plastic water bottle on site at Cali Roots since year 4. And for a while there, we were doing it back of house because the artist still needed water on stage. But as the artists progressed more in the greening aspect, a lot of them had their own containers. And so we eliminated all single-use plastic. It was a big thing. My wife Amy is has more her department. Is where she really kind of nails, and that's really one of her big focuses. We work. It's like, again, it's the right thing to do, and we try. The hardest part of doing multiple festivals is trying to implement this program with partners that you have, because every festival, festivals that we do outside the market, we're usually partnering with somebody who's, and not everybody is on with this program because it costs more. There's, the bar, some of these venues don't like it because you're losing, water sales, et cetera. And it's like, so we put, there's definitely a lot of pushback we do to kind of implement this program, but it's an important thing. And I think after having a kid too, is like, well, we need to, it's cliche, but like, we need to like set it up for, the next generation and the generation after that. I mean, we're not taking very good care of this planet at all. There's a story that sticks out for me. My mom passed away, I think it's 5 years ago now. And we ended up spreading her ashes in Hawaii. When I went back home, and we ended up spreading her ashes in Hawaii, in Kahuku. And there was a beach that we used to go to growing up. And when I was growing up, it was it was nice. There was no plastic. I went back there 5 years ago, and I brought my daughter. It's like, we're going to relive. Go to where I grew up swimming. And we went to this beach on the North Shore in Kahuku, and the waves were breaking, and there was plastic all in, like, little pieces of plastic all in these waves. And it's just like, what happened? And it's that really kind of shook me, because it's like, this is the beach I grew up on, and I was swimming in these waters 30 years prior to, whatever it was, 25 years prior. And it was clean, and so over the last 25, 30 years, we've done a lot of damage to the planet. And, again, we're one festival or one festival producer, but like, I'm hoping that by what we do kind of sets the path for, other bands within our scene, other partners we're working with, and hopefully there's a trickle effect that will then get more festivals to be green, Yeah. And we've also found ways to not monetize it, but at least offset the cost of what it costs to be green. Because there is extra costs, but done right, you can still kind of offset some of those costs with sponsorships or a pint program or whatever it might be, that you can offset those costs. And so it's I think people like get stuck in their way, like, well, no, we need to sell bottled water at the bar. Like, no, you actually don't. Or you can work with like an open water or something like that sells canned water that actually are 100% recyclable cans instead of plastic bottles. So yeah, it's a little bit more, but it's like, you're also like, this can is not going to end up in the ocean. And so there's again, it just comes back to trying to do the right thing. Even when it's sometimes doing the right thing is hard.
Yeah. The community, I know, has really responded, and people really appreciate it. When I think of the reasons I do music, my mission through everything that I do is to inspire souls to be their authentic self, and so that they can go on and inspire others. And recently, Sojo won the Grammy for the best reggae album. And I know there was like, chatter and blowback on them for being a white American group to win the Grammy in this music that has come from, Jamaica, and before that from Africa, and there's lots of roots. How is it that first of all, what do you think about that and the controversy there? But as a community builder, how do you align the values of your community to be as embracing as you are?
That's a great question. And Soja is, we're dear friends. We have, known each other. I knew them back when they were soldiers of the Army, and like we were doing shows in Hawaii with them. And Elliot has has become one of my best friends. Their manager, and I was just talking to him on Friday, and we were talking just about this and kind of what they have dealt with in the last couple weeks since winning. I mean, obviously there was the emotion of winning it, which was well deserved. I think they tour very well. I know you guys toured together. I mean, they're a great band, and and they have a great team around them. As far as like the Cali Roots stuff, I think for me, because growing up listening to roots reggae, I think it's always been important for me to incorporate, foundation artists or roots artists within our festivals and our events. Unfortunately, sometimes as a promoter, I'm also, it's called the music business, right? And I have to use the business aspect sometimes. And I'm not the type of festival that will bill. I bill artists a lot on ticket sales, right? It's a big focus on how we bill, and that's just how it is. That's just the way the industry works sometimes. And so I get a lot of slack for not putting Jamaican acts on the top line or having them headline, and that's always a touchy subject. But I also think it's extremely important that we incorporate these artists in it. Like we have this coming up one, we have Turbulence and Anthony B and Protege and Alvarosi, and we got Sean Paul. I mean, it's just like we do what we can to Earthcry was like one of the up and coming bands out of Jamaica. We have them on the festival, and I think it's important to showcase those artists, because I think sometimes the American crowd sometimes doesn't necessarily know the foundation of reggae music, which I think is extremely important. I think the roots and where reggae comes from is extremely important to be known, especially if you're a reggae fan. If you listen to Revolution, and Revolution's good about it, and Slightly Stupid's good about it, where they showcase Don Carlos or Kabaka Pyramid. I mean, they're doing what they can to showcase those artists, and I think it's good for us as promoters to showcase those artists. So the fans, they might listen to Revolution, but then they might start going through the Spotify, or before just be going to Rasputin or something. They start digging through the CDs and the vinyl a little bit more. But now with the digital thing, music is so accessible. So like we're hoping that they dig deeper and find more artists and find the LKJs of the world and find the Oswalds of the world, because I think it's as more and more of these elders pass away, I think I always worry that reggae music, the roots of reggae music, will not be forgotten, but it won't be as strong as it once was. And we see that some of that now. And I think it's important for me to and people I work with to really kind of showcase those artists. It's hard because we also need to sell tickets, and so it's a fine balance.
Yeah, for a lot of kids who grew up in Northern California, they, would go to reggae on the river with their parents, and they grew up and Steel Pulse was their Michael Jackson, you know what I mean? And it was like the music they listened to in their house, and their families were steeped in, this Northern California culture, which was full of reggae, and at the same time, the Grateful Dead on the other side of things. But for a lot of kids, it was like, the reggae side of it was much more exciting. It was music you could dance to. It was music that had a strong message. It wasn't just like free form and going on forever. There's like there was like a different aesthetic to it that for younger kids it was more attractive, and so it became part of the language of young people who now you see like in bands like Revolution, and I personally think that's a good thing, and I had a lot of conversations with Sly and Robbie about this over the years, and Robbie Shakespeare, who just recently passed away, God bless him. And Robbie would always say to me, Michael, reggae is a rhythm. It's a style of music. It's not a nationality. It's not a religion. It's style of music. And that's why he had done songs with No Doubt. He had done songs with Gregory Isaacs. He didn't see it as being anything but that. And at the same time, reggae has also been come from a very specific cultural and
Mhm.
religious place of, Rastafari and the history of slavery and coming to North America and resistance and rebellion against colonialism and Marcus Garvey and Rastafari, and like all these things are also a part of it. So it is really important that we teach that. And it is really important that we pass that on. And it is really important that people of all cultures and experiences can enjoy the music together, and still carry some of those values of understanding that there needs to be justice, and that we need to take care of the planet, and that we need to respect one another, and that when people are being treated unfairly, that we do work to and fight to change those wrongs, and that's all been part of the culture and all been part of the music. And I'm really happy, that's why I brought it up, because I've seen that you've had those foundation artists on every year. And I think that's a great thing. As you grow as a festival promoter, I see you started doing stuff in other parts of the country. Do you want to do things in other parts of the world, or like what are your ambitions? What do you want to do with this as you develop it?
Dean, that's a great question. I mean, it's obviously through the pandemic, I didn't know what we were going to be doing. So, but as we've come out of it, and revisiting the goals that we have, obviously we have started our Mexico festival. So that happens in November. At one point I wanted to do as many festivals as possible. And as over the last couple of years, as I spent more and more time with my daughter and more time with my family, I realized, like, what? I don't want to do 10 festivals a year. That's a lot, So my core value is to kind of, really focus on Monterey, focus on, adding, one or two other festivals to our repertoire of stuff that we do, and doing them as good as possible, like putting our best foot forward. Instead of having 10 that you're doing, you're doing all right, I want to do 3 or 4 that we're just like crushing. I want to roll out being from Hawaii, I want to do the largest island festival in the state, in the country. It's like, and how do we do that? How do we do that and pay tribute to the Polynesians and Micronesians and all the other island communities, with that, because that's where a lot of my roots are from. And there's a lot of island artists out there as well. And so that's one of the goals that we want to do. And we started doing more stuff in the country space. And so, like, I'm a huge, like, outlaw country fan. And so I've been listening. I listen to a lot of Tyler Childers and Zach Bryan and artists like that are phenomenal artists. And so, like, how do we create a festival like that in Monterey that is 5 minutes from my house? If I can create 2 or 3 new festivals, 5 minutes from my house, at the venue that we live by, like, that's, I don't know, that seems like a pretty good life. So, but I think, all in all, man, I one of my biggest goals is to never to always be there for my daughter and my family. And, like, I think that's become a more and more of a goal, and that's, it's not, again, like I said, doing the right thing is not easy sometimes, but that's definitely a big one. And how do we build our businesses that are profitable and still keep that freedom that we've
Hold on
all
to the values.
yeah. So,
when I was a kid growing up, concerts were something that it was like you never really went to a concert until, like you said, you either snuck out of your house to go to it, or you went to it when you were like 16, you got totally wasted, you like smashed your family's car. Like, these were like the icons of going to a concert. But your festival has always been family oriented. Like, you see children at the shows, kids are welcome. It's part of growing up. And I really feel like that's a super healthy thing. It's something that I've always tried to encourage at my shows is people to bring their kids, so that it doesn't become that thing of like, oh, at 15, I got to go and get totally wasted. It's like, kids grow up with music, and they know, like, that a music festival is something that's about people coming together, people experiencing music, having conversations, meeting someone you've never met before, along these similar lines of interest and creating this community that everyone looks after each other. So you don't have to totally go off the rails in that
Yep.
way. And, describe to me how important it is that your festival is really a family place.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely important. I think it's about that community, and I think, you touched on Reggae in the River earlier, and Reggae in the River was a big part of why I became a festival producer. Carol Bruno and Jenny and that whole team was really a big part of why I became a festival producer, and being at that festival and seeing the community and seeing the family element made me that, like, this is what I want to do. And so we try to incorporate that at Cali Roots. It's like, and other festivals. And sometimes it gets a little tricky because, obviously the night shows get a little wild, but like, for the most part, like you said, everybody looks after each other, and that's a big part of it. And those are things, as a promoter, like, I'm just providing the canvas for that to happen. I'm just providing, here's the canvas, and the fans and the bands and everybody else, that they make it happen. There's a magical thing that happens, and it's nothing that, I mean, yeah, I'm providing the space for it, but there's nothing else that I'm doing. It's like we're providing a safe place for it to happen. And we actually have someone working for us now. This girl Madison, who's 18 years old, but like, she's been going to our events since she was like 13 with her mom, and now she's working for us. And it's and hearing more and more stories of that. It's really cool. Like, hearing, like, there's people that hit us up and say, hey, I'm at college now, but like, I want to come back to Monterey and work with you guys. I've been going to your show since I was 12 or 13, and like, we grew up there, and like, it's such a big part. It was such a big influence on them, and that's touching. I mean, that feels good. It's like, yeah, like, this is part of what we created. We created this space for people to grow up, and like you said, it's not just about sneaking around and getting messed up. It's about enjoying the vibes and enjoying the element and just enjoying the space. And I think that gets lost, especially as we've progressed more and more into the technology era. It's like, I think it's like, I think being able to, like, just embrace the energy of the music and the fans, like I've said at the beginning of the interview, that's one of the biggest things I missed, right, was that energy of the fans and energy of the crowd. And it's unmatchable. And to hear more people tell us about how that affected them and how that shaped who they are, and that's a big part of their growing up and a big part of their life, that feels good. It's like, all right, like, this is good. Like, we're doing the right thing here, and I'm proud of what we've done.
Yeah. Dan, I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody who comes on the show, which is, what does it mean to you to stay human? How do you define what it means to be human, and how do you stay that way? How do you hold on to it?
That's a great. I knew this question was coming too. So yeah, and I put more thought into it, and I think for me, it's like, I think staying human is being present. I think that's a big part of it, and trying to not be affected by the outside noise, which, again, is easier said than done. It's like, it's I think, no matter how much we all focus, and I haven't done it in a month or so, but I was meditating for a couple years straight, and like, it was really helping, and like, really helping being present and not letting all this other clutter kind of cloud me up. And it's just being present and living, and putting my best foot forward every single day, and being proud of what I'm doing. I think that, for me, that's kind of what staying human means. It's like, let's just live, and be present in this real time, and again, like, my daughter teaches me that every day, because I always say, like, the brains and the minds of a child, it's like, they're not so it's like not to use the word canvas again, but it's a clean canvas. They're not so, like, jaded from everything else that's happened throughout their lives, and so it's a super clear present mind. And that's definitely kind of how I've been trying to live the last few years, and continuously working on it. So I think we're all work in progress, right?
Well, Dan, you got a lot to be proud of, as a father, as a festival promoter, as a music lover, and as a community builder. So thanks for all the great work that you do. And I encourage anybody, if you've never been to a Cali Roots Festival or any of the other Cali spin-off festivals around the country, make sure you check them out. They're really incredible events. And there's always incredible lineups, but more than that, it's just good fun, good vibes in the community, and great experience for everybody involved. So keep up the incredible work, and we want to say thank you to Gibson Guitars for sponsoring this show. And if people want to know more about the festivals, just go to CaliRoots.com.
Yeah, CaliforniaRootsFestival.com. Yeah, they'll get them up to date on everything. And yeah, we're looking forward to it, and we got to get you back out there soon.
For sure, man. We'll do it.
All right.
All right, brother.
Yeah,
Peace.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it, man.